Hi loves, great to have you here. Welcome to today's tutorial. Today I'm gonna be showing you how to draw a whole orange and peel half of the orange. As usually, I'm gonna be showing you all of the process, starting from the initial sketch, then selecting colors, then coloring and adding those realistic details. Plus, you can get freebie printable outlines on my Patreon page. The link is in the description box. For the paper, as usually, I'm gonna be using smooth drawing Bristol paper. And I know that for many beginner artists, Copic sketch alcohol markers are pretty pricey. So I've decided to show you that you can use any brand you have, or even combination of brands. So today I'm gonna be using 3 brands of alcohol markers, but details a little bit later. At first, I need to make the initial sketch, mapping out the approximate location and the size of the big orange and then the half of the orange. Drawing circle for the right orange. Drawing circle of a little bit irregular shape for the half of the orange. Making loose lines for the orange sections. Erasing the unnecessary lines and making the shape a little bit organic. Showing the thickness of this half orange because it's a little bit tilted. Refining the shape to make it more natural. Loosely mapping out the stem on the second orange. Adding the attachment of the leaf. Drawing S shape for the main vein of the leaf. Loosely mapping out the general shape. Refining some details and adding cast shadow from the oranges. Picking up the excess graphite with my kneaded eraser. Now it's time to pick the colors, and as I've said, I'm gonna be using 3 brands of alcohol markers. At first, I'm picking out 3 oranges, light, medium and dark. It doesn't matter what brand you are using. Pick 3 similar oranges from your collection, light, medium and dark. For the oranges, I'm using Finecolour brush markers. Now I'm picking greens. I'm also gonna be using 3 greens, light, medium and dark. And for the greens, I'm using Sketchmarker brush alcohol markers. Next, I'm gonna be using warm grays for shading oranges. I'm picking light warm gray W2 and mid-tone W4. These are Copic sketch alcohol markers. Next colors are neutral grays for the cast shadow. I'm gonna be using 3 of them, light, medium and dark. I'm also gonna be using colorless blender, but it's optional. I just want to show you that you can use expensive as well as affordable alcohol markers together. And for the textures and soft highlights, I'm gonna be using white colored pencil by Carandache Luminance. Starting off with the lightest orange and mapping out the highlighted areas. Moving on to the mid-tone orange and covering the rest of the oranges. Adding dotted textures on the highlighted areas. I wonder how many times in this tutorial I'll say the words oranges and orange. Probably a lot, so bear with me. Going back to the previous light orange and softening the transition between 2 colors. Grabbing my mid-tone orange color and filling in the rest of the peeled orange. Blending 2 colors softly with the light orange. Now let's work on the whole orange first, because they have different textures. Grabbing my dark orange and mapping out deeper shades of the fruit. Also adding the shadow from the peeled half, and adding dotting textures on the mid-tone sections. Going back to my mid-tone orange color, softening the transition and adding more textures. Going over the mistakes with my colorless blender. It makes the unwanted pigment very light. Now grabbing my dark orange color and enhancing those shadowed parts. Adding dotted textures on the shadowed areas. Let's deepen shadows a little bit more, grabbing my mid-tone warm gray W4 and going over the shadowed parts with this color. Also adding those dotted textures in the shadowed areas. Softening the edges of the shade with lighter warm gray W2. Also adding those little shadows on the stem attachment. Grays are usually muting colors and I want my orange to be a bit brighter, so I'm going over those gray areas with my dark orange. And now with the same color, I'm deepening the values on the peeled fruit. Going back to my mid-tone orange and softening the transition between two colors. Going over the lightest areas with my light orange. Deepening the shadowed areas even more with the dark orange color. Adding shadows with my mid-tone warm gray W4. Going over the shadows with dark orange to bring back vibrancy. Darkening here and there with this color. And now it's time to add those unique textures on the peeled sections. Grabbing my white colored pencil and starting to add those white veins. At first I'm adding those in the center. And now from the center to the outer edge I'm drawing curved lines. Try to vary the thickness of the lines, leave some lines thinner and some make a little bit thicker. Adding a bit more white in the center. And now doing the same thing with the other half. Adding those lines on the shadowed areas but not pressing too much on the pencil, so those lines are a little bit lighter. Making some lines thicker as well. Adding a little bit more interest to the texture, grabbing my dark orange and making dots in the some sections. Doing the same thing and now with the mid-tone orange. Now this looks much more interesting, and let's move on to the leaf and stem. Starting off with the lightest green color and adding it to the highlighted areas. Now grabbing my mid-tone green and filling in the rest of the leaf and the stem. Softening the transition between two colors with the light green. Now adding dark green to the shadowed areas. Orange leaves are usually very smooth and you can barely see the veins. Softening the transition with mid-tone green. Enhancing the shadow on the leaf with help of my mid-tone warm gray W4. Going over the gray with dark green. Adding softer blend with the light green. Enhancing some shadows with the dark green. Adding hints of veins with white colored pencil. Shading the main vein with the mid-tone green. Adding highlights on the lightest area of the orange with help of my white colored pencil. Adding those dots in irregular shapes for the texture. Also adding those textures on the mid-tone and dark areas, but try not to press on the pencil very much. Deepening the shadows on the leaf with mid-tone warm gray. With help of mid-tone green, adding the hints of the veins. Doing the same thing but on the shadowed part and using dark green. Erasing that little mark with colorless blender. Blending darker veins with mid-tone green. Now let's move on to the cast shadow. I like to map out the whole shadow with the lightest color. Now building up the shade with the darker neutral gray. Going back to the previous color and making softer transition. The darkest part of the shade is where the object meets the surface, so I made in my darkest neutral gray. Taking slightly lighter neutral gray and softening the blend. Making even smoother transition with the lightest gray. And this is optional, you can soften the edges of the shadow with the colorless blender. Adding a few touches of the dark neutral gray. Softening the transition with slightly lighter gray. Softening that shadow corner with the lightest gray. And now I feel like I want to darken that leaf fold. So I'm grabbing my mid-tone neutral gray and adding it to the darkest areas. And going over the grays with the mid-tone green. Adding a few touches of mid-tone neutral gray on the stem and the leaf. Correcting mistakes with the colorless blender. Erasing all of the remaining pencil work. And there you have it, juicy orange illustration with alcohol markers. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and give it a try. If you would like to see more real-time and fully narrated tutorials, as well as very easy to follow photo guides, then check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description box. Thank you so much for watching and happy holidays!